Today is Thursday, April 21, 2016. It's my pleasure to introduce our presenters for today. I'll introduce Elaine Kraft and then ask her to introduce her co-presenters. Good day, Elaine. Welcome to the webinar. Elaine, I'm not hearing your audio yet.
Thank you, Mike.
There you go.
I appreciate the introduction.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Elaine Kraft, Principal Investigator for the Mentor Connect project. Thank you for joining us today. Today's webinar is designed to guide you through the preparation of forms associated with submission of an NSF grant proposal. While these forms are not unique to the NSF ATE program, some of the instructions for how you should complete the forms are specific to ATE. Our goal is to help you prepare competitive grant proposals and avoid common mistakes as you prepare and submit your proposal. The Mentor Connect team will provide guidance for completing the required forms, but please be reminded that we are not speaking on behalf of the National Science Foundation. The opinions we express are our own. We will share information from NSF publications as well as from our own experience and from having made all of the mistakes ourselves before getting it right. Joining me today are my friends and colleagues Ellen Haas and Charlotte Forrest. Ellen is co-principal investigator for the Mentor Connect project, and Charlotte is a co-principal investigator for the project too, and she also serves as project manager. The Mentor Connect team collectively has many years of experience completing the forms we will be discussing with you today. Now, we'd like to know how many people are with us today. You have logged in, and we have the names of the people that have logged in, but we're curious to know if there are other people in the room with you. So using the chat box feature that Mike described, just type in how many people are in the room with you. If you're alone, it'll be one, or you may have a group. Those of you who haven't responded yet, you can continue to go into the chat box and just let us know how many people are watching this webinar or listening to this webinar with you today. Next, I want to tell you a little bit about an overview of what we'll be discussing today. We will be covering 8 basic and specific forms or related documents that accompany NSF ATE proposals. You can see from this diagram that the heart of any proposal is the project description. Some people refer to this as the narrative, and we may use both terms during today's presentation. The project summary, which you see, let's see if I can use this little arrow thing here to point to things. Well, let's see. There. The project summary is your elevator speech. This is a short one-page addition to your project that describes it, and Ellen Haas will be telling you a little bit more about that later. Also, there are 2 important forms that we will not be talking about today. One is the budget, and the other is the budget justification. These are very important documents, of course, but we covered them separately in a February 18th webinar this year. Both the webinar recording and a tutorial derived from the webinar are available on the Mentor Connect website. Charlotte will tell you more about how to access Mentor Connect resources later in the program. So, what are we going to be discussing today? We're going to talk about the cover sheet, the project data form, biographical sketches, current and pending support forms, facilities and other resources, references cited, data management plan, and supplemental documents, which are somewhat like appendices to a proposal. Each item serves a specific purpose. We will walk you through each one and help you understand what is required. Our desire is to help you better understand these forms and how to avoid some of the errors frequently seen by program officers and reviewers. The bottom line is that careful preparation of forms contributes to a proposal that is more competitive overall. I thought an example might help you understand why forms are not a trivial part of your grant proposal. The numbers in this example are from an actual proposal that was submitted to NSF in October 2014. The full proposal was 86 pages long. Of those 86 pages, you can see that the project description or narrative was 15 pages, which is the maximum allowed for a project description. And then there is a one-page project summary. And it's limited to one page. Next, you have a budget, and the budget forms consist of a form you submit for each year of the project, and then Fastlane automatically generates a one-page cumulative budget for all years of the project. This results in a 4-page budget for a 3-year project. Now, you also have a budget justification, and that's limited to 3 pages. Yours may not be a full 3 pages, but that's the most you could have, and we did have 3 pages for this particular proposal. So, what is left of this entire proposal is 63 pages of, you guessed it, forms. That's 73% of the proposal. Used in this example was made up of forms, and your proposal will not be radically different. Wow, that's a lot of pages of forms. So one piece of advice we have for you today is to get started on these forms right away. They take some time and need to be prepared thoughtfully. Okay, Mike, let's poll the audience. I'm going to let you do this using your polling mechanism so that we get a feel for our Mentor Connect participants in today's webinar.
Thank you, Elaine. So you can see the question, are you now or have you been a Mentor Connect participant? And that means either a mentor, a faculty team, or other college personnel. And you can see people are responding very quickly to our poll. It's a simple question, folks. Just go ahead and answer yes or no. Elaine, so far the no's are ahead of the actual Mentor Connect participants. That's interesting because I know there's a lot of interest in this topic. Let's give people just another moment to respond here. We're catching up with the yeses. Sort of fun watching these live polls. That's stable now. Elaine, you can see that you have a slight favoring of those who have not been an actual Mentor Connect participant, at least up until now.
Thanks, Mike. This is terrific. I do recognize many of your names on the participant list, both friends within the Mentor Connect project and others in the ATE community. And that is our goal. It is to help as many people as we possibly can to prepare and submit competitive grant proposals. And we're very excited to have all of you participating. If you're not already working directly with Mentor Connect, to learn how to develop good, fundable projects and increase the competitiveness of your NSF ATE proposal, we encourage you to investigate this opportunity. At the end of the webinar, Charlotte will share information about opportunities to get involved and the resources Mentor Connect provides that are available to everyone. Speaking of Charlotte, I will now turn the program over to her to get us started. Welcome,
Elaine,
Charlotte.
just go click on your pointer to turn it off there. See in the upper frame. Is that, yeah, that's it. Good, thank you. Go ahead, Charlotte.
Awesome. Thank you, and hello, everyone. To kick off, we're going to go right into this because we have lots and lots of information to share regarding forms. And to start that off, the first thing that I want to do is to introduce you to 2 valuable resources that you will need to refer to over and over again during the proposal writing and preparation process. These two resources are the Advanced Technological Education, or ATE, Program Solicitation. That's indicated by the star there. And the Grant Proposal Guide, which you'll hear a lot of ATE folks call the GPG, which is the acronym. While the GPG covers everything that you need to know on how to submit a proposal to any division in National Science Foundation, the ATE solicitation includes information that is critical to ensuring that you're meeting requirements for your specific program. In this instance, ATE solicitation. So please, and you'll hear us say it quite often, please read your solicitation carefully. A special note on the solicitation, we recommend that once you've accessed it, that you print this out and refer back. Have it handy in your grants office. Make sure if you're a faculty member you have it at your desk. This is a very important document. As indicated by the dates, these documents are updated quite regularly. An ATE solicitation is typically going to be a 3-year solicitation, so if you're in the process of writing a grant right now, you're covered, but if you are looking to write a grant in the future, 2016 is the last year for the current listed solicitation. So please watch for the new solicitation for 2017 that will likely come out later this year. And then third, what you see on the slide is contact information for the Fastlane portal itself. This is a cute little box that's found once you access Fastlane on nsf.gov, but it proves to be very significant as you move towards writing your proposal. Now, just a couple of notes before you think about inputting your forms. Before you input forms into Fastlane, you'll want to meet as a team and think about some of the following, some which are listed on the screen and some which I'll highlight as an aside. Decide on one person to handle inputting information into the system. Usually it's going to be your principal investigator in collaboration with the sponsored research officer, or SRO. This is also termed at NSF as the authorized organizational representative. So you always want to make sure that you're cross-checking and signing off for completeness before you submit the proposal. You will need to register your institution within Fastlane, where you will then get a Fastlane ID. You'll need to identify who your sponsored research officer or authorized personnel at your college providing approval for the forms. Decide who that will be very early. And then note that you can park items into Fastlane, and the proposal is not final until you hit submit. And you actually have to go through that process twice of submitting, so please keep in mind that you can go ahead and get things done early. Now today in our webinars we like to give you first-hand information. So throughout this webinar you will see an icon that, as indicated on the screen, it's a little light bulb icon, and this emphasizes the importance, or a tip or trick to be discussed throughout the webinar. These are things that the Mentor Connect team and others have learned the hard way, and we'd like to draw your attention to these small hints to make your life a bit easier and a smoother process. Before we get into forms, it's important to note where information is. A lot of times just getting to information can be a barrier for some of us, and as I've learned the process, this is something that's been very valuable. Reading the grant proposal guide, we refer to that time and time again. This document is actually a portion of a larger overarching procedural document at nsf.gov called a PAPPG, and that's how you'll usually hear it, which is the Proposal and Award Policies and Procedures Guide issued by NSF. As you can see on the screen, there are three major components of that document, and the GPG that we often refer to is one of the three. It is fairly easy to identify the location of the Grant Proposal Guide on the nsf.gov website. However, we think one of the easiest ways to find it is to type in GPG into the search box once you arrive on the website. Accessing this information on the website gives you information, and you make sure that that information is the most recent. As I said, this information is updated all the time, so you want to make sure that you're accessing the most recent information. All pertinent requirements are indexed in the Grant Proposal Guide, and there are five major components as indicated on the screen. Notable is the proposal preparation section, where you will find all of the proposal checklists and information about proposal preparation. Reading the fine print within the Grant Proposal Guide has never been more important than it is now, so please take note. Seemingly minor information in the fine print can make or break your proposal. One important example would be something like pagination instructions, which is found in number 2 here on the screen under proposal preparation. Pagination and formatting guidelines are vital when you're filling out forms and producing your grant proposal. And just, I'm very visual, so I like to give a few examples. What you see here on the screen is actually a access point on the nsf.gov website where you would access the Grant Proposal Guide. You'll notice that there are a few different ways to access this document, and I'll show you just a few examples to get you started. The HTML version is pictured here. Viewing in HTML format allows users to see more of an overview. The links that are embedded have hyperlinks that allows you to access information pretty quickly. So really, I like it because you get a full outline. You get detailed information kind of on one page. And then, like I said, those hyperlinks that you saw are live. The PDF version, just a note, I always like to keep a copy in PDF or on a USB. And of course, on our website and others, they provide access directly to the PDF of the proposal guide itself. I also recommend that you bookmark this page. Again, it's all in line with your preferences, but the PDF is one of my favorites because you can bookmark the pages. You're able to skip to pertinent topics, and there's a nice breadcrumb that takes you through the table of contents. Thank goodness for technology, huh? So with all that being said, having the solicitation and this grant proposal guide at your fingertips will save you time and energy while writing your proposal. There are other tools as well. For example, Mentor Connect and Evaluate. Some projects and centers within the ATE program have made shortcut checklists for you. So one of those is a grant preparation checklist. So please reference those type of materials as well to help you navigate this surplus of information. These tools are meant to assist you in interpretation of all of the NSF procedural documents, which sometimes can be pretty daunting. At this point, we want to get into forms, what it looks like, kind of a step-by-step look at how to access everything that you need. Although the Grant Proposal Guide has all of the regulations that relate to the Fastlane system, the information itself and the way that you see it looks a little bit different, a lot different. Fastlane is the system or dashboard that you use, for now anyway, to input proposal information, make changes to existing proposal information, and change personnel down the road. In the near future, research.gov will become a repository for all information and preferred entry of NSF grant proposals. But again, at this time, we emphasize the ease of use for Fastlane for a number of reasons. Some of those, couple of the reasons, using the Fastlane system, you're able to input all of your data at one time in line with our ATE solicitation. Whereas if you use other dashboards, you would have to input documents pertinent to the ATE program separately. So both systems can be used, but we are giving instruction based on use in Fastlane. Once you enter data, it will look quite different in a hard copy form or PDF form outside of the Fastlane system. For the purposes of form completion, we think it's more helpful for you to see screenshots of exactly where you'll be entering the information and also how it might look once it's print ready. You'll be clicking the Go, and I'm going to pull down the pointer here if I can. All right, here we go. These, you'll click the Go buttons as you go through the dashboard. One note, you see the two blue arrows here. These are items that are pertinent to ATE. There are several that you do not need to worry about 9 times out of 10 if you're new to ATE and getting proposals submitted for the first time. Some of those that you will not need to worry about, but you probably want to know what they are, include the mentoring plan. This is applicable only to proposals that include graduate students in the budget, and it's not generally applicable to the NSF ATE proposals. Another is the additional single copies document. This is an option primarily used for research universities when proposals contain things that are proprietary or things that are considered privileged information. ATE proposals are not likely to include these. Another one is suggested reviewers. This is usually a research proposal function where experts in the field are limited, and this is not applicable, so you will leave this blank as well. And then lastly, deviation authorization listed here. This is any deviation from proposal submission per the grant proposal guide requiring advance permission from an appropriate NSF administrator. And again, this is not something that you're likely to fill out. So notice that you can view the latest and updated and saved information signified by date out to the side of the form. This is particularly nice, and Mentor Connect encourages proposers to add and save as much information into the Fastlane system as possible. So every time you make an update into the system, you will see where you've saved that information and the date, which is very nice. Now, one really important note. Again, things are always changing, and one significant change that NSF has made is that they have implemented a new automated compliance check function. So your proposal will not be accepted if required forms are not completed as specified. So it's very important that, as you're putting in forms that you're going through double, triple, quadruple checking things to make sure that they look like what you want them to look like and that they will meet the criteria for a compliance check. So the very first form is a cover sheet. Here are some tips for completing the cover sheet information, and we'll go through some of this very quickly. The cover sheet provides the National Science Foundation with a concise summary of all of your administrative data for the proposal. It also certifies that all of the statements in the proposal are true and that they will follow, your college or institution will follow appropriate federal grant regulations. And then lastly, it secures signature and shows that your college has given permission for this award to be made, hopefully in the near future. So in the cover sheet, there's no actual signature that you have to sign, but it's all now electronic process. So one other important note before I go into a little bit of detail on this cover sheet is please make sure that your sponsored research officer or your authorized, as coined by NSF, your authorized organizational representative, and you'll hear the acronym AOR for that, is registered within the Fastlane system. The AOR, or Authorized Organizational Rep, must submit certification using the AOR login function within Fastlane. This has changed a bit. In the past, there was a window for error, and users were provided a 5-day extension or deadline once their proposal was submitted. But at this time, it is vital that this is done in advance, before the submission deadline for the proposal. At this time, there are no exceptions to this rule, and your college must submit that there's an AOR certification that must be signed by the solicitation deadline. Again, if you get into Fastlane early and ask questions as you navigate the system, you'll be just fine getting all of this done. So this is what the cover sheet looks like once you've finished your proposal. The majority of ATE proposals, including those small new to ATE, will be in the ATE program projects track. You'll add the choice into consideration for by NSF, and I'll pull down my arrow again. And this is indicated here. You really want to make sure that if you're not exactly sure what should go here, which again, if you're new to ATE or a new ATE project, what you see here is a true depiction of what should be there. But getting your proposal in the right category is super important. Projects take longer than you think they will. You have to give time for evaluation at the end of your project and different things. So please make sure that you request the maximum time that you can, i.e. for a small grant, the 3-year maximum. So in this box, you would put 36 months under proposed duration. You'd be surprised how long it takes to, get everything ramped up, and you want to leave that wiggle room at the end. Similarly, it's also important that the amount that you request is accurate and appropriate for this particular track. For small grants, those that are $200,000 or less, you'll want to indicate that here. Please be mindful of indirect costs and other expenses that could carry your total over a threshold of $200,000. If your grant is over $200,000 and you're submitting for a small new to ATE proposal, your information will likely be reviewed in a project discipline category other than the small grants category. We've kind of found that out the hard way. So please, if you're new to ATE, make sure that this requested amount does not exceed $200,000. Just a quick note about your proposal number here at the top of the page. This proposal number becomes your grant number should you be awarded and your proposal accepted by NSF. Knowing your proposal and grant number is very helpful at every stage of the proposal. This is how you locate your proposal when you're working through Fastlane, and it also helps identify your college when you're communicating with your program officers. If you're participating in Mentor Connect, for example, we ask for this proposal number to track the status of your awards and help you through the process. Just a quick note, NSF is most likely to set your start date for your project on a date that you select, so please consider what would work for your business office. For example, we have a July 1 fiscal year start, so it tends to be a bit easier to align proposals with that particular date. Consider the time it will take to get faculty release time worked out and when you want to start the grant based on that. For example, if you receive your award notification in May and you select the date of September 1 to start, your summer, you will have to get all of that summer worked out. Choosing a mid-semester start date will make it difficult or impossible to get people working on your grant and supporting your grant as it rolls out. Another note, don't choose a date that is too early in the calendar year. This could result in a receipt of your award notice on or after your requested start date, which would put you behind from day one. You want to stay ahead of the game. The start date, it can be changed, but it's not a very easy process, so that's why we're putting a little bit of emphasis here on making sure that you work all of that out with your team at your college. So all in all, it isn't a form. What you see on the screen is not something that you're inserting information into piece by piece. However, you submit information elsewhere in the Fastlane system, and this is what is populated. It's not done carefully. You can end up with, if you see at the bottom here, their PI names and information about them. You want to make sure that all of this information is complete. So, and if it's not complete, it can tend to look pretty sloppy to a reviewer. So please just always, look at your proposal, print it out, look at it, and do all of that prior to submission. This is a print-ready version of the certification page. We talked quite a bit about that authorized organizational representative feature, and this is where all of that pops up, and you're able to confirm that information has been input and completed. You do not want any missing information here. So, in a nutshell, and remember when you see that light bulb icon throughout the webinar, please note that as a real deal tip and trick. It's important to remember that the cover sheet is where your title is entered. Do not use an NSF in the title or National Science Foundation. Strive to find a title that's very descriptive, innovative, but yet meaningful. For example, this last bullet I just want to emphasize, you might use something like expanding internships to improve success rates in engineering technology, or you might even use the title of Bridge to Biotechnology. Don't try to be cute, and please don't be demeaning. Don't call your faculty out by saying we're having a program and it's going to be called Turning Bad Technician Educators into Good Ones. We guarantee that does not usually sit very well with your peers, so please be mindful as you formulate a title. Names that result in acronyms, they can be good, but again, you just want to clarify what your message is in your proposal. Project data form, that's the next form that you will see as you navigate through the Fastlane system. This form provides the reader and reviewer a quick glimpse of the discipline, the type of college submitting the proposal, potential numbers and kinds of populations on who will be impacted, and an indication of the kind of proposal in broad terms that you are submitting. So just a couple notes here on the screen, but the main thing that we want you to note is that you don't want to minimize your impact. You know, if you have college partners, external organizations that you're working with, please, note that. And for example, if you're planning to host a workshop of 20 high school teachers on how to infuse geospatial technology into their classes, and you expect each of those teachers to use a new teaching module or geospatial technology tool in, say, 8 classes, you have an average of 25 students in each class. And so that impact is huge. That impact is huge. You could impact up to 4,000 students. So you want to be realistic, but you also want to indicate that here's a place to do it. One of the things that we want to point out is if a reviewer divides the amount of money being requested by the number of folks that you put here, how will that make your project look? Will it look like a good investment? Is this something that you would fund? Think about those things as you're calculating, your budget and going through this process. But the project data form is where all of that is done. Boy, oh boy, we're only halfway through, 2 forms in here, but this is the table of contents, and yay, we get a little break. This is a freebie. The Fastlane system does automate this portion of the proposal automatically. However, it does look different in the system when it shows it to you versus the output, so we just want to make note of that. So at this time, we've covered a reasonable amount of introductory information about forms. So if you have questions, please enter those into the chat box at this time. And Mike will help us facilitate those, and we will move forward with the webinar.
Thanks, Charlotte. We do have a couple of questions. There are some technical ones. For example, how do you know how to do this? I'm not sure I do. How do you change the highest degree of a principal investigator? How do you change that? Do you know, Charlotte? If not, we could ask Elaine.
I'm going to defer, as I've never had that happen.
Mike, I'm assuming that somebody has, for instance, registered somebody in Fastlane, say with a master's degree, and that particular individual then completes a doctorate degree. You can go back into the system and as if you were going to be registering this person again, and you can update that file information for them. Sometimes you need to do that when telephone numbers change and that sort of thing.
Sure.
So you go back into where you registered them originally.
That makes sense. Now, Elaine, as long as I've got you, here's a good question. You're asked, Charlotte mentioned putting in the start date. Well, if the proposal is submitted in October, what's a reasonable start date to put in?
Well, the earliest I think I have seen an award come out for somebody was April the 1st, and that is early. There are a lot of notifications that will come out beginning about this time of year, but most of them are for start dates May 1st, June 1st, July 1st. Sometimes the start date will be the middle of a month, but we actually have a graphic in some of our materials that show the length of time from the time you put the proposal in until you're likely to hear from NSF, until you're likely to get your proposal started, and it is a time lag. But I would not encourage anybody to really ask for a start date before the summer, after the October that they submit. That would, June 1st is probably the safest date to put in, although there's no rule about that. You can certainly put whatever date you want to in. It just may not match up with when you get the award.
One more for you, Elaine, or Ellen might jump in as well, but let's start with you, Elaine. Is the authorized representative, the one that has to sign the thing, is that the same as the ARO or the SRO?
I think there's a slight distinction between an SRO and an ARO. The ARO has got the highest level of authorization to take action on behalf of the college.
Okay, good. I
So once
see.
the ARO is, yeah, and the ARO is established, the ARO establishes the permissions that everybody else in the system that's registered with NSF has.
Good, and one of our participants has given us some detail there in the chat window. Thank you for doing that. Well, good. At this point, I'd like us to go forward, Charlotte and Elaine. I think let's go forward because people have gotten a good sense. They're starting to put their questions into the chat window. So take us forward.
Awesome. Ellen?
I'm going to go back to your presentation now just a second. We'll head back there. Okay, now we're back. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to cover our project summary. So this is essentially your one-pager. Your project summary summarizes your project, including an overview, and most importantly, includes a statement on intellectual merit and broader impacts of your proposed activities. And you're going to hear those terms a lot. Note your proposal will not be accepted if it's submitted without a project summary, or if the project summary does not address both the intellectual merit and the broader impacts of your proposal. So Fastlane will prompt you to enter this information into 3 separate text boxes. So that's actually what you're seeing on the screen. Again, an overview, intellectual merit, and broader impact. You're required to submit information in all 3 of the text boxes. Your project summary in total should be no more than 1 page, and the total number of characters that will be accepted, totaling all 3 of the boxes, is 4,600 characters. So say you prepare your project summary in Word, you can then cut and paste the appropriate pieces into the text boxes. We will have you note sometimes there can be difficulty with character counts when cutting and pasting. So if you get repeated errors and you're not seeing these invisible characters that are somehow transferring over, you may have to resort to typing the text directly into the text boxes. And if you are successfully able to cut and paste, you do want to be sure to proofread. Sometimes characters can convert to strange characters. Possessives are an example. Apostrophes can sometimes translate into these bizarre characters. So you're going to want to go through and just make sure everything is how you want it, and you can edit in the text box itself, or if you are having extreme issues cutting and pasting, you may in fact have to type in. I mention this because NSF will only accept the project summary as a separate document or something that you would upload into your proposal if it contains a lot of special characters such as mathematical symbols or Greek letters, because those wouldn't be supported in the text box. So if your summary includes use of these characters, you would need to check the box on the project summary page that says that you would be uploading it as a supplemental document. Note this is not typical of ATE project summaries to have these types of special characters. So again, unless your descriptions include that, you should just plan to use these text boxes to input your project summary. All right, some takeaways. Just to go over some of the 3 parts of the project summary. The overview is a description of the activity that would result if the proposal were funded, and a statement of the objectives and methods to be used. So it's really key that you should clearly identify in the first sentences the disciplinary focus of the project, the kinds of activities proposed, whether it be curriculum adaptation, professional development, and the primary audience for those activities. NSF uses this information to assign the proposal to a panel for review. And you'll need to get right to the point of your grant and explain your proposal's objectives and what you would do to achieve those objectives. As a general rule, you don't want to use this summary space for building a rationale for your project or going into great detail about your college's community environment or stating the amount of money you're requesting. It should be a concise overview. Consider it your elevator speech, as it indicates here on the slide. So if this is all someone reads about your project, they should be able to understand what you're trying to do and your desired outcomes. And when addressing intellectual merit and broader impacts, Be sure that you understand what NSF means by those terms by studying the criteria provided in the request for proposals and the grants proposal guide, which Charlotte showed you where they are and how they'll become your bedside reading. You do not have to address all of the criteria listed by NSF in the ATE program, but you should plan to align with at least some of what has been provided to you as prospective grantees. So the statement on intellectual merit broadly should describe the potential of the proposed activities to advance knowledge, and the statement on broader impacts should describe the potential of the activities to benefit society. And the ATE request for proposals helps to refine this criteria in a specific section on merit review principles and criteria. So examples of questions that you can address in your proposals taken straight from the RFP include around intellectual merit. Does the project have the potential for improving student learning in science or engineering technician education? Are the goals, objectives, and outcomes and the plans and procedures for achieving them worthwhile, well-developed, and realistic? Under broader impacts, you'll see questions that can be addressed, such as has an assessment of workforce needs for technicians been conducted? Does the project work with employers to address their current and future needs for technicians? Are other educational institutions involved in project activities? Does the project promote diversity in the technical workforce? So I mention these to call your attention specifically to that section of the RFP. You'll want to pay close attention to them when crafting your intellectual merit and your broader impact statements. Now I'll turn over to the project description. So this is the heart of your proposal. This is where you get to include all the information. It should provide a clear statement of the work and the activities that you are seeking to undertake. It should address what you want to do, why you want to do it, how you plan to do it, how you'll know if you're successful, and what the benefits and impacts will result from a successful project. So that means including information on the project's motivating rationale, goals, objectives, deliverables, and activities, as well as a timeline, a management plan, covering the roles and responsibilities of all senior personnel, a plan for sustainability after the NSF funding ends, an evaluation plan, and a dissemination plan. And all of this in 15 pages. You'll want to, again, pay close attention to addressing intellectual merit and broader impact, that review criteria that I just talked about. And note that in your project description, you must include, it's required that you include a separate section labeled broader impacts, where you can address the broader impacts of your proposed work within the project description. So some examples of potential outcomes of broader impacts might include reaching women and underrepresented minorities in STEM, improving STEM education at a particular level, and increased partnerships with business and industry. On the screen is the actual form, if you will, in Fastlane for project descriptions, as you would be uploading your project description into Fastlane as a PDF or in a variety of word processor files that Fastlane will then convert into a PDF. And you do want to double check your upload once it is in Fastlane to make sure there were no conversion issues. And it'll ask you to do that and to accept the document. So here are a few tips in preparing your project description. Some of these may seem like no-brainers, but they're actually really crucial to the success of your proposal. You will want to pay attention to font size and layout and the overall length of your document. The length of the project description, as I've said, must fit into 15 pages with 1-inch margins on all sides. So once uploaded, again, it's a good idea to check that you do not exceed this amount. While the grant proposal guide allows for a minimum font of 10-point in specific fonts such as Arial or Courier, Mentor Connect recommends that you use an 11 or 12-point standard font to ensure readability. So if you use Times New Roman, the GPG requires an 11-point font. Use section headings, bullets, or charts to ensure a clear proposal and readability. Do note that any visuals you use must be included in the 15-page limitation. And do keep in mind your reviewers. Your reviewers may have a stack of proposals to read, and you may be the last one they're reading late at night. So if you've submitted something using a minimal font size with a poor layout and you don't have topics and headings that help and ease, it may not encourage a good rating. As another point on formatting, do not use automated endnotes. You can number your references and then list them in a separate reference section. There's a references cited section in Fastlane where you can upload your references or list them in a text box, which Elaine's going to cover shortly. This is a required section, and the project description should make clear how each reference played a role in motivating the project's design. And since it's its own section, references do not count towards your 15-page limit. Also note that the project description should be self-contained, so you shouldn't include URLs that would ask reviewers to leave the description to view an external site. For one, reviewers are under no obligation to leave your proposal and view an external site. That information could circumvent page limitations, and the sites could be altered or gone between the time you submit and the time it's actually reviewed. So as with all of this, you're going to want to make sure you follow grant guidelines for what the project description should address. There is another specificity that the project description must begin with the section results from prior NSF support, if applicable. As the majority of you are new to NSF funding, this would not be applicable, but if any PI or co-PI identified on the project has received NSF funding, including any current funding, in the past 5 years, information on the award is required, whether or not the support is directly related to your proposal. So there's specific guidelines on how you'd want to list those results from NSF support if that is applicable to your proposal. And then I will move on to biographical sketches. So biosketches are required for each individual on a proposal identified as senior personnel, including PIs or co-PIs. And the biosketches should be uploaded as single PDFs or entered as text for each individual senior personnel. And NSF has a very specific format for biosketches, so again, consult the GPG. And it's a good idea to create a template for biosketches. So when you're asking your senior personnel to complete them, they can input their information in the required format. Mentor Connect also has examples of biosketches in its resources for you to reference as well. And this is something you want to complete as soon as possible. This is something you can get out of the way and upload it into Fastlane while you continue to work on other parts of your proposal. I wanted to go over a little bit of the components of the biosketch. They must not exceed 2 pages. You don't want to include any personal contact information, and the biosketches should address education and experience of the senior personnel to run the grant project. So under professional preparation, you would list the name of the undergraduate, graduate, and or postdoctoral institutions and include the location of the institution, major's degree, and year. Under appointments, you would list in reverse chronological order all of the individual's academic and professional appointments beginning with current employment. And under products or publications, you would include a list of up to 5 products that most closely relate to the proposed project that are citable, such as publications or data sets. The list must include full citation information. If your product section only includes publications, you can change the heading from products to publications. And if you do not have products or publications, that is okay. This biosketch format was created to also serve the needs of the research community applying for NSF funding, so it's okay if you don't have anything to list in this section. And synergistic activities. So this is a list of up to 5 activities that demonstrate the broader impact of the individual's professional or scholarly activities as it relates to program activities being suggested by the proposal. So this is a place to demonstrate skills and assets that the individual holds. Some examples of things to include in this category might be innovations in teaching and training, development of curriculum materials, broadening the participation of groups underrepresented in STEM, and service to the scientific engineering community outside of the individual's immediate organization. Specific examples might be if you've worked as a subrecipient of an ATE Centers grant, or you're working with other ATE projects as primary partners, individual memberships and professional societies if it relates to proposed grant activities, or serving in advisory roles. And with that, I think I am now turning it over to Elaine to talk to you about current and pending support forms.
Thank you, Ellen. Current and pending support forms are required. Many people find these forms confusing. To understand how to correctly complete the forms, it helps to know why you're being asked to do so. This is the reason. NSF wants to know that the individuals who will be working on the grant will not be committed for more than 100% of their time should the proposed project be funded. Also, NSF wants personnel working on grants to have dedicated time to do this work. The expectation is that grant personnel will have a portion of their normal workday or work week devoted or dedicated to the work of the grant, and that the cost of providing this time will be covered with grant funds. Alternately, or additionally, a person may be paid with grant funds for doing grant work when not under contract to the institution, which is frequently the case during summer months. We will talk more about this issue, we talked more about this issue in our budget webinar in February, and you can refer to that information for more detail. For now, just keep in mind that as you complete your current and pending support forms, NSF will not allow a person to have more than 100% or 12 person months committed if he or she serves in a PI, co-PI, or senior personnel role for a funded project. In general, there can be no extra pay while doing grant work. There are very limited exceptions, but tread carefully. We advise discussing what you have in mind with a program officer at NSF if you have questions. When completing the current and pending support forms, it's important to understand the definition of current and pending. Current refers to grants already awarded, not the one you're working on. Pending is what you call a proposal that either has not yet been submitted or has been submitted but for which funding decision has not been made. The proposal you may be preparing at this time, therefore, will be a pending grant for preparing current and pending support forms. Let's now talk about how many of these current and pending support forms you will need to prepare. Separate entries are required for each person serving in a senior personnel position, which includes the principal investigator, all co-principal investigators, and anyone else working on the project that you classify as senior personnel. And that's actually a budget category. And for each person, there must be a current and pending support form for each proposed or ongoing project for which the person has a time commitment, including the proposal you're preparing. This means that every person included in your proposal, in any of those roles I mentioned, will have at least one current and pending support form, even if this is your very first NSF ATE proposal. The Grant Proposal Guide tells us that current and pending support forms must include all current project support from whatever source. So if a person who will work on your project is receiving financial support from other grant funding sources, this support and the corresponding time commitment must be listed. The GPG states, for example, federal and state, local, foreign government agencies, public or private foundations, industrial, or other commercial organizations. Please note that the Grant Proposal Guide also states that the proposed project and all other projects or activities requiring a portion of the time of the PI or other senior personnel must be included even if they receive no salary support from the project. That's a point that a lot of people miss. As you can see, the time commitment for all senior personnel who will be working on a project can't be taken lightly or taken for granted. If this is your first grant, you may have only one current pending support form for each person serving in these leadership roles, principal investigator, senior personnel, so forth. However, check to make sure that these individuals are not working on other funded projects, such as Department of Labor grants, state-funded grants, or foundation-funded grants that will need to be reported. Now let's talk about the information that you will need to supply on the current and pending support forms. There's a template in Fastlane, which is shown on the screen now, for preparing these forms. This is what the template looks like. The process goes more quickly if you collect all of the information you will need prior to completing the forms. I will walk you through each line for which you will be supplying information. Also, check and double-check to make sure that the information you submit in the current and pending support form is consistent with the information you provide elsewhere in the proposal. Now, that sounds like a no-brainer, But the reality is you may be adjusting your budget over time and you've already completed your current and pending support form and you don't remember that you need to go back and change the current and pending support form too if you change the amount of time somebody would spend on a grant. So be sure to look across these various places this information is reported to make sure it's consistent throughout your project. The NSF staff will check to make sure that the time commitment is consistent and that it is done correctly. You will need to supply the following information for each project and person for whom a form is completed. The project or proposal title, the source of support, and that's asking who funded the project or who is asking to be funded for this particular proposal. These sources may be NSF, Department of Labor, U.S. Department of Education. That's the kind of response that you would put. It may be State of California, a foundation such as the Lumina Foundation. Just put the source of the support that's either been received or that you are requesting. The project location is typically your institution's location or the location of the entity currently implementing a previously funded award. It could be another institution, say if you're a co-PI on another project that's funded to a different institution. The total amount of award, that's over all the years of funding for the project that you're describing. The start date of that project, the end date of that project, and there's a specific format for month, day, and year. And then the type of support, the current or pending. So make sure that you have indicated the right category for the project and the time commitment that you're reporting. The person months per year committed to the project is the trickiest part of this whole form. I think the rest of it people do pretty well. But in this particular case, if I can get the little arrow over here, this is the one we're going to talk a good bit about because that's the tricky one that most people mess up. And that's where the majority of mistakes get made. And associated with that is this calculation right here. So let's look at an example. In this, the person months per year committed to the project is the way you report a person's time commitment. You will see in the note at the bottom of this page that the question is not whether or not you will be working on the project all year, but how much time translated into months that you will devote to the project over the course of a year. Person months must be reported with only one decimal place, so you may need to round off numbers when reporting. There are 3 options organized into 2 categories for reporting time. Person months are to be reported in one of those categories or the other, never both. The first category is calendar. The calendar is typically used for 12-month staff who work some every month during the year. Person months reported in this category are most often associated with salaried personnel who work a percentage of time, such as 10% or 30%, throughout the 12-month calendar year. The second category includes academic and summer. You really can't tell from the way they're lined here. See the academic here and the summer here. Those two actually go together, and you use those for faculty. But it's, like I said, that's not obvious on the form. Faculty typically work on academic year contracts, and some faculty also work during the summer. On a summer contract. So the academic and summer boxes are provided to report this time in person months. To determine the person months for faculty requires some calculation unless the person is being supported 100% by a grant. Since this reporting of person months on current and pending support forms and on budgets is very often done incorrectly, let's dig a little deeper and go through a couple of examples. In the first example, we have a 12-month employee who dedicates 10% of his or her time to grant work. The number you should put in the current and pending support form is 1.2 calendar months, which is abbreviated CAL, C-A-L, which is 10% of 12 months. Notice that you report time in months and using only one decimal place. If you have made an entry in the calendar box, leave the other two boxes blank. Fight the urge to put numbers in all three boxes. You will never need to put numbers in all three boxes. Next, consider a faculty member who is working on an academic contract. Typically, these contracts are for 9 months, but in some situations, it may be a 10-month contract. This is where your math skills will be needed because all time must be listed in months. Some translation will be required. For example, if the faculty member typically teaches 5 courses per semester and this person will be provided with 1 course release time to work on the grant, both fall and spring semesters, that's considered 1/5 of a person's workload or 20% release time. Academic, referring to the academic year. Calculate 20% of the months covered by the academic year contract and report that in the academic box on the form. In this example, I assumed a 9-month contract, full-time teaching load of 5 classes, and 1 course release time per semester to be provided by the grant. This will be 1.8 person months for the academic year. If the release time for the person is just for 1 semester, then you would report half as much time in months based on the number of months covered by the person's academic calendar contract. 1 course release time for 1 semester is 0.9 person months, so we would enter 0.9 in the academic box on the form. Now let's consider a situation where a teacher who has 1 course release time for fall and spring semesters also will work on the grant in the summer. Again, you must determine the time the person will work on the grant in terms of months and report this in the summer box option. For example, the summertime commitment could be 2 weeks or half a month, which will be reported as 0.5 person months. You enter the 0.5 in the summer box on the form. If a faculty works on the project only in the summer, then you just put that in the summer box. If they work during the academic year, fall and spring, and in the summer, then you will have something in the academic box and in the summer box. But then in that case, you want to leave the calendar box over here empty. Remember, you're always going to have something empty here. Never all 3 boxes filled in. You may just have summer, you may have just academic, you may have just calendar, or if it's a faculty member working both academic year and summertime, you'll have academic and summer. Now, what does this current and pending support form look like once you get it finished? Fastlane, after you enter into that form I showed you, produces a form that looks like this example. In this case, I pulled one for the Mentor Connect co-principal investigator, Dennis Faber. When we submitted this particular current and pending support form, he was currently working on the first Mentor Connect project. So this was his first one up here. This was current support, and he was being, and since he is not faculty, he was reported with calendar person months, and notice that the academic and the summer are both left blank. And then, because we were putting a second Mentor Connect proposal in, we had to report that as pending support. So he had 2 entries into this particular current and pending support form. NSF will be checking these forms and adding up all of this time, you know, in here and here and here. They'll go down and they'll look at all of that to make sure that you do not have somebody reporting more than 100% of their time in a time frame. They will pay attention to the start and end dates for projects. Okay, just a few quick takeaways from this particular activity. You want to check the right time allocation type reported by calendar year or month. And I've emphasized that a lot. Don't put something in all 3 boxes. Please note this second item, that faculty time is limited to 2 months. That information does appear in some NSF documents, but does not apply to the ATE program. That's one important distinction of the ATE program, that your faculty time on grants is not limited to 2 months of summertime. And reviewers and program officers really like to see a realistic time and budget allocations for those that are working on a project. They don't want to see a lot of work and too little time, and they don't want to see too little work and a lot of time that you're asking for budget support for. Now let's talk about the Facilities, Equipment, and Other Resources form. This form provides an opportunity to explain the infrastructure, laboratories, equipment at your institution, and perhaps at partner institutions that will be available to support the success of this project. You may also mention personnel as part of other resources with this form. It isn't necessary to describe all of the capabilities of the college. I think that's an error a lot of people make. They talk about all kinds of things that their college has that really don't apply to the project. This can be distracting to reviewers if the descriptions do not seem to have a bearing on the project that has been proposed. The NSF instructions state that in order for NSF and its reviewers to assess the scope of the proposed project, all organizational resources necessary for and available to a project must be described in this particular form. The NSF Grant Proposal Guide also states that proposers should include an aggregated description of internal and external resources, both physical and personnel, that the organization and its collaborators will provide to the project should it be funded. Such information must be provided in this section in lieu of other parts of the proposal, such as your budget justification or project description. The description should be narrative in nature and must not include any quantifiable financial information. Note that the instructions specifically tell you not to assign monetary value to the items listed and described on this form. If you have personnel who will devote time to the project but will not be included in the budget, this is a good place to include this information. The form offers the following categories for submitting information: laboratory, clinical, animal, computer, office, other, and major equipment. For ATE grants, clinical and animal categories are typically not applicable, and you may indicate this on the form as has been done in the example on the screen. So you see here that if you have something that is not applicable, oops, I lost my arrow. There it is. Just put not applicable, and that way you indicate to your reviewers that you haven't overlooked something. Laboratory support is quite often important for the successful implementation of an ATE grant. If this is the case for your project, then you will want to describe your current capability even if the proposal includes some improvements or equipment additions. Computer capability can be essential for your grant, especially if the project focuses on information technology, cybersecurity, or in any number of other advanced technologies that are computer dependent and will make use of the computing capability in computer labs at your institution. Office support is also important to describe since budget guidelines specifically state that grant budgets may not include office furnishings or everyday office equipment such as computers, copiers, and items that support normal office operations. The personnel implementing the grant, however, will definitely need office support. And so your institution, if the institution is providing dedicated office space or access to administrative support or similar, this is a good place to make a statement about this support. In the other section is where you can describe resources other than facilities and equipment, such as personnel support. For example, if you have internal talent that you have assembled to serve as an internal advisory committee, or perhaps you have a college recruiter lined up who will support the outreach activities of the grant, but will not receive compensation from the grant for doing so. A third example of personnel you may want to describe in this section could be instructional research personnel who will help you with internal evaluation and data collection. In other words, if somebody is donating time to the project, this is a good place to describe that donated time. Just make sure you don't assign any monetary value to it. Major equipment can be an important category for some ATE grants. Advanced technology programs are very often equipment intensive. Your institution may have major equipment that will be used in implementing the grant, or you may have a partner university or industry working on the project and providing major equipment for your students. Perhaps you have a university or industry partner with an electron microscope or a clean room that will be used for teaching your students. If major equipment is involved in the success of your project, this is a place where you can describe these resources. I think you can see that the Facilities, Equipment, and Other Resources form gives you an opportunity to share information that you can't fully describe elsewhere in your proposal, and in fact, aren't supposed to describe elsewhere in your proposal. The final set of ancillary materials for your proposal, known as supplementary documents, is the other place you can include some additional information to support your proposal. Now let's talk about references cited. NSF expects you to do some research, a lot of research in fact, on the process as you develop your grant proposal. Like most funding sources, they encourage the use of research-based strategies and adaptation and implementation from previously funded NSF ATE or other funded projects. Your references indicate that you have investigated what others have done that worked. You will want to cite references that explain outcomes and led you to select a particular strategy, curriculum, teaching methodology, or other promising or proven approach to address the challenges in technician education. Reference citations are also essential for the data you provide in building your rationale. As you include information from your research, here is one tip to keep in mind. You will want to manually number your references throughout the project description and then prepare a separate document with citations that correspond to those numbers. The separate document will then be uploaded into Fastlane. References print out separately and do not count toward your 15-page project description, as Ellen noted earlier. You recall that I suggested that you manually number your references as you work. The reason for this is that if you use automated endnotes, your citations will automatically be included in your 15-page project description, and that's not where they belong. Now let's talk about the data management plan. Including a data management plan is a fairly recent requirement for ATE proposals. The requirement now is that proposals must include a supplementary document of no more than 2 pages labeled Data Management Plan. The supplement should describe how the proposal will conform to NSF policy on the dissemination and sharing of research results. In essence, NSF expects you to share the outcomes of your work, and timely publication of results is encouraged. However, there are considerations of privacy, confidentiality, intellectual property, and other rights. The data management plan provides an opportunity for you to describe the care that will be taken in this regard. NSF documents state that your data management should describe 1. The data examples, physical collections, software, curriculum materials, and other materials to be produced in the course of the project. Number 2, the standards to be used for data and metadata format and content. Number 3, policies for access and sharing, including provisions for appropriate protection of privacy, confidentiality, security, intellectual property, or other rights or requirements. 4, policies and provisions for reuse, redistribution, and production of derivatives. And finally, number 5, plans for archiving data, samples, and other research projects, and for the preservation of access to them. Well, some of this may sound like Greek to you, but it needs to not be that daunting. The intent is to outline the types of data and other materials or products that will be generated or collected by the project, how data will be stored, protected, and appropriately shared, and how what is generated by the project will be preserved during and beyond the project, and how others will be able to access these products. The data management plan will be reviewed as an integral part of the proposal, coming under intellectual merit or broader impacts, or both, as appropriate for the scientific community of relevance. As I mentioned, this is a relatively new requirement, and we're all still learning how to develop data management plans that will work for our projects and within our institutions. These plans do not need to be extensive, but they do need to address specific requirements and comply with the intent of this form. And here's an example of a data management plan that was prepared for a small grant for institutions new to ATE. As daunting as the instructions sound, the plan need not be more than a page and can't be more than 2 pages, so it's really not that extensive. So I encourage you to visit the link on the screen for additional guidance on how to develop your data management plan. Now I'll turn it over to Ellen, who will talk about other supplementary documents. Ellen?
Thanks, Elaine. I'm going to go through this quickly because I know we have a lot of good questions in chat and we're getting short on time. And I will just mention if we don't get to your questions in chat, we will be answering them after the fact and sending out that information to you. So as Elaine mentioned, the only required supplemental documents are a data management plan, as Elaine covered, and then you also need to include a list of all of the known people aside from participants and students who will receive compensation from the project and their affiliation. And these would need to be uploaded, this list would need to be uploaded under other supplementary documents. So you need to provide a list of all the people receiving compensation from the project and their affiliations. And some of these people may not be from your college. And this is an area to look for consistency. The list needs to be consistent with the budget and budget justification you submitted in your project description and your current and pending support form. So in other words, if you don't want someone listed in this supplemental document whose function hasn't been addressed in the project description or the budget. Letters of commitment, well, they're not required. It's a good idea to obtain a few well-chosen letters of commitment for your proposal. And the key word here is commitment. Reviewers want to see documentation of commitments, such as a letter from an industry partner pledging resources or time to the project, letters that outline specific collaborations, partnerships, or resources and are not merely letters of support. So letters that just endorse the project or offer non-specific support shouldn't be included. And you do want to be aware of boilerplate and developing templates for letters. Reviewers do notice if you have a solid proposal but then have 5 identical letters of commitment, it just doesn't look good and it actually calls into question the real level of commitment on behalf of a partner. So you do want to be aware of boilerplate. Reviewers do take notice of that. Examples of other supplementary documents that you might want to include, if you're proposing to revamp curriculum and have already updated a module, you might want to include a sample of that. Or if you're conducting a professional development workshop and have developed a draft agenda for that workshop, you could include that. You just want to be careful not to go over 30 pages. Reviewers are not required to read anything over that amount, and it's also discouraged. And you also want to note that any supplemental document needs to adhere to the same font and page formatting requirements as the project description. And supplementary docs can be uploaded into its specific section in Fastlane. General advice, start early, review what you've written several times, and don't be afraid to ask questions. And with that, I'll actually allow you to do so. So if Maytech wouldn't mind facilitating some questions, and then I believe Charlotte has a little bit of resources to go over before we end.
Thanks very much, Ellen. Ellen, there's a question. These are always the tough ones about this cost-sharing business. Now, it was mentioned that the voluntary committed cost share, in the facilities form. I mean, how does that work with this cost sharing not prohibited? Can you sort of remind us of this cost share issue again? And we'll ask Elaine to join in too. But do you want to start, or should we start with Elaine?
I think we should start with Elaine. I mean, as has been said, cost sharing is prohibited. So I'll ask Elaine to elaborate on that.
Elaine, would you mind, how do you manage that when you get to the facilities side?
Okay, well, the big thing is the dollar amount associated with what somebody's doing or with a piece of equipment. You may have an industry, for instance, that's going to allow you to use a piece of equipment or something like that, but you just can't put a dollar amount with it, and you can't put anything about cost sharing in the budget. That is expressly prohibited. But you do have people that are contributing to the success of your project who will not be in your budget. You couldn't possibly put everybody that contributes to your success in the budget. And so you can describe this in the facilities and equipment as long as you just steer clear of monetary amount. That is your one place you can describe that sort of ancillary support.
You know, that's a good response. Thanks, Elaine. A related question, right? So now, how do you record? You've got a co-PI, right? That's not funded by the grant. Can you get? Or you have to get their current and pending in? You do, and how do you do it? Is it possible?
Well, if you name them in the project as a co-PI, then
Yes.
you will. They're going to be looking for current and pending support forms, a match to match for anybody that's in the budget in a senior personnel role. But if you've named them in the project and they're showing up on the cover page of your project as a PI, it will have to match up with a current and pending support form. And you don't have to indicate. I mean, you indicate they want to know what the time commitment is, even if they're not getting any money for it.
Sure. And okay, good. Another related question, can you have an adjunct faculty member as a senior personnel? They have to be full-time faculty.
There is no requirement that they be full-time faculty. There are some pragmatic reasons why it's not always a good idea to have an adjunct faculty member as a principal investigator, because there are certain things principal investigators need to do at the college, initiating contracts and purchases and stuff like that, that an adjunct would not have the authorization to do. But there is no restriction, and sometimes adjunct faculty are real value added to projects.
Elaine, as long as I've got you, let me try one more on you. Do you think you have to name an evaluator, or could you get away with a to be named?
That's a tricky question. Typically, reviewers like to see the evaluator named. They like to see a robust evaluation plan. In circumstances where your college is going to make you, for instance, bid out for evaluation or something, you may want to say, that your evaluator would be a particular person or an equivalent, somebody with equivalent talent in preparation and so forth, to be selected through the college's competitive bid process. I mean, it really depends on how your college is, but the more information, the more specific you can be to show your reviewers that you've really given evaluation a lot of thought, and that you have identified qualified evaluator, even if that may not be the person in the end that you get to contract with. That will make your proposal more competitive.
I think you're right. That's a good answer. I know we're getting close to our time, and I do want to turn over to Charlotte now. We will take you up on answering some of these more detailed questions, outside of this webinar format. Oh, but I've got one little one I have to ask Ellen. Ellen, can I use color in the proposal?
Yes, you can use color, but you do want to be aware of how you're using color. If it's something when it's, some people may be printing it out or using it, seeing it on a screen. So you just want to make sure it's readable in both color and black and white.
Sure, that makes sense. I couldn't resist asking that one. Yeah, go ahead, Ellen.
Yeah, well, I might add to that be really careful about shading. Sometimes you put shading into colored shading to point things out, and do look at how that prints out in black and white. Sometimes it darkens something so much it makes it very hard to read.
It actually answers one more question. Can you print from Fastlane and see how it looks? And you can, right? There's a print function in Fastlane. So
that's correct.
Right. Let's go ahead, Charlotte. Why don't you take us to project resources, and then we'll wrap up for today.
Sure. Wow, such a information-rich webinar. And with that, we just want to share a few project resources as well as other ATE resources with you. Please visit our website. We're at www.mentor-connect.org. And there we do have a resource library that is available and specific to helping those who are in the grant proposal writing process for ATE. For example, there you will find, if you click on Visit Our Library off of the home page, you will have access to samples, templates, and FAQs, and many more things. A couple of examples, you know, we've done a budget webinar, but we do have a couple of budget templates available. NSF used to have a form called the 1030, and it's really nice to kind of play with and input your data. And then also things like current and pending support templates, things like that are available. Of course, these are not all of the resources, in the ATE community has a plethora. You can go to evaluate.org for all of your evaluation questions and needs, and then atecentral.net is also a hub for all things ATE. Lots of faculty development resources out there, so we just want to pinpoint those quickly. But really, if you have any questions, we encourage you to stay in contact with MentorConnect. We have a number of ways by which you can reach us. Send us an email, visit us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and certainly, pardon me, check out our YouTube page where you'll find webinars such as this live one that you've attended today, and follow up with us, ask questions. We encourage you to use us. Should you have colleagues who've missed this production, please, slides, full presentation are available on all modes of communication. And on behalf of our project team, we'd like to thank you today for your participation, for your attention during this technical assistance webinar, and we hope to connect with you very soon. We'd also like to, as always, thank you, Mike and Maytech, for hosting us today, and we hope you have a wonderful day. And most importantly, we can't do this without the support of you all, so please take a moment and fill out our survey as we conclude the webinar. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Charlotte. What I've just done is launched the survey. Oops, that doesn't seem like exactly the right question, so let me close that for a moment. That isn't the correct link here. It's going to take me a minute to redo that linkage, folks. So as you leave today, if the survey doesn't come up for you, we'll go ahead. Let me try it one more time. Nope. So I've got to recorrect that link there. And then we'll, if it doesn't come up in the next few minutes, we'll send out that link to you. So thanks everyone for your participation today. As you leave the room, I'll eventually get this survey link right up to you, and then we'll be ready to go. So hold on just one second. Here it comes. That's not it. No, that's the Western Michigan. I'm talking to my IT person to get this survey launched. Hold on just a second. Everyone, thanks for joining today. If we are not able to launch this survey for you, we're going to go ahead and send that to you by email. So thanks everyone. Ellen, Elaine, Charlotte, thanks very much for your participation today. That officially concludes our webinar. Goodbye, everybody.